Oi you, it's time for another episode of Dorothy and the Dealer. Let's tune into the conversation.
Okay, Lina, this is not the second coming, this is the third coming.
The third coming.
For the third take of this, so welcome for the third time, Lina.
Thank you,
We've had
guys.
issues with some of our tech, so we are.
It's all Mitch's fault.
It is my fault.
I
Most of the
think
things around here
I
are
think
my
that's
fault.
a very good practice to have, is to blame Mitch for everything that is going on, all the bad
happens
stuff.
all the time. I know.
Love you deeply.
It's what happens all the time anyway.
We've been
Anyway.
looking to have you on this podcast for the longest time, so obviously third time lucky.
Yes.
Where we get to do this introduction again. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's great having you here, pal. It's really good having you here.
And as you know, we start our podcast with a song all of the time. So what is your song? Guess what? I actually already know it because I've asked you this. Okay.
So is Something Stupid from Frank Sinatra?
Oh, I love that
Oh, Frankie,
song.
let's go.
Yeah.
Let
Go
me hear
on,
it.
you
Come
got to
on.
sing it now.
Knock a couple out.
All right. And then I go, I say something stupid like I love you.
Oh, I love that song.
Then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid
Like I love you.
I love that. I love that.
Okay, we've a bit to talk about and we've a bit to crack on with. So,
And, you know, I think that maybe we should start with your expertise and what we're kind of going to talk about as we go through today's podcast. And then what I'd like to do is get a little bit of background information on where you started and how you met us and stuff like that. I think that's a great way to start.
so what is your field of expertise?
Well, I'm a microbiologist by
Yeah.
trade. So
Yeah.
I did my studies back in Colombia, as you can tell by my beautiful accent.
It is very
Love your
nice.
accent.
Thank you. And yeah, so I did microbiology, and then since then I've been working specifically in genomes, so all the genes that play in especially the evolution of fungi and fungal diseases in plants, in different crops, especially here in Western Australia. And yeah, that's what I specialize and play with. I love fungi.
You love fungi?
I love fungi.
You love it, do you? And it's because, I mean, there's been a lot happening in, I mean, even in the couple of weeks, the couple of days that we've been trying to get this for the second and third time, but there's a lot happening in the fields around the world with fungi and its uses in terms of dealing with lots of things. But your area is specifically around crops
Yeah.
and being able to, just explain it in terms of crops.
It's able to being able to understand the diseases first and the interactions between the plant and the fungi that are trying to take over the plants.
Right.
So it's just understanding how they get in, what are the characteristics of the plant that are allowing the fungi to take over. For example, it's like when a person is sick. So you know, like all the immune system is down, so then anything can get in. So it's a little bit that. So what's making the plant susceptible for the fungi, or what is the fungi putting out there that makes them take over the plant?
So let's maybe start at the beginning. Like I can't wait to get talking about all of that. But let's maybe start at the beginning and like where did this all come from? How did you meet us? Where did this interest get sparked from?
Yeah, well, I think my work with you guys has started a couple of years ago, and it helped me understand what I was here for. So I think that was my question since I was little. What is it that I'm here for? What is it here that I'm here to do that is more than a 9-to-5 job?
Right.
And so as I grew up in Colombia, it's a very Catholic country, so it was all about the religion. But growing up, I just saw that the religion wasn't giving me the answers, and also the things that people was doing was completely opposite to what the religion was saying or the church was saying. And so I think I felt like, hang on, you're not giving me the answers. Something else has to give me the answers. So I think that's when my interest into science started, just because it seemed to me that science had the answers at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And then,
What were you looking for? What was the question?
Yeah, exactly. So what am I here for? What are we as as a society are here for? What is it that is our
So,
place?
yeah.
And I think I have as well this. I felt that something was missing, and for me, what was missing was the truth. So I felt that I grew up with not truth around me. And I think for me that was what the equilibration moment for me was with you guys, that I understood that everything that has happened to me was to bring me to the point of that is my purpose, to find the truth, to help give answers and bridge the gap between nature and the science.
Because it's a funny thing, when you've done so much study and so much research and you've educated yourself so long, and then to get to a point where you're like, okay, but why have I done all this? You know, why have I headed down that road? Why did I end up in Australia? Why did I study?
Yeah.
So it's pretty magical to have that moment where you realize, that's why.
Exactly. And I think that was my equilibration moment. It was just, it was like a domino effect, that every single piece took place in the whole maze of my life up to that point. That exactly why did I came here for, like, to Australia? Why I left everything behind?
Right.
Why, and everything is been to on pursuit of that truth and knowledge.
So science obviously had to play a role in that for you. Like, you felt, so was it the difference between that whole religion, like growing up Catholic, and the religion and the way that we were taught in that upbringing, to the science where you thought that there was a standard?
A standard.
What did you end up finding in terms of that?
Well, I think I'm still searching for it. But what I found is that it's not black and white. It's not just the religion, and it's not just the science. I think what I'm trying to do every day is find the middle point. Find the middle point where we can prove many of the things that, well, let's not call it religion, but like the tradition of our culture has brought us. And there is so much knowledge that, for example, the Aboriginals or the indigenous people have, but because it hasn't been backed by science, it's not taken seriously in many ways. So that's what I'm trying to find, that middle point. Okay, this is what nature is showing us, or is that has taught us for so many millennia, and then how can we use the science to prove that?
And it seems throughout the whole, the past 100 years, that there's been some sort of, we know that science has organised wisdom, right?
Yeah.
And so in science being organised wisdom, it is really where the wisdom of the ancients is coming through, and now we're at a really pivotal point where it's now being proven by science. We think about epigenetics, I remember speaking to a physicist or a doctor not so long ago, and he was like, the fucking hippies were right. Epigenetics means from above, so below. And so we see that there's been that, that push to see things very, very hard lined and only one way. But it seems that now what's happening is that, the lie of why we were here, what we were doing, how long we'd been here, the use of plant medicines, the use of all of these things that the ancients had been using for like thousands and thousands of years, over a short period of time got very poo-pooed and, got very, demonized. And now we're at a point where that's flipping on its head. I mean, we see now that they're legalizing the use of MDMA for certain treatments. Yeah, and also psilocybin for certain treatments, and so it seems that narrative, and anybody who was pushing against that narrative, they were getting demonized. They were really, really they were really up against losing their career, losing time, all of their, just because they spoke out against this narrative, which was to say, no, it's only this way. And we've really seen that over the past 2 years, where the narrative, where people were going, no, this is not right. The narrative was proven in the end that actually the people who were saying it wasn't right were fucking right. So and so as a scientist, how has that been for you?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a battle every day. I feel that I still sometimes find very interesting trying to talk about those big questions and big topic outside of outside of that science. So I talk about it with the scientific community. All I hear sometimes is just silence.
Right.
Anytime I bring up the bigger questions, they just like stay quiet. And I feel that they just don't know how to answer it, because I'm coming from another, I guess, from that middle point. Like, hey, hang on, have we looked at this? Have we really just taken one theory as that has to fit it all? And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. Like, just the theory or the theories that we have had up to now are not fitting the discoveries that we've had. So the narrative is just not fitting in. And that is where also science and I guess especially academia start is poo-pooing people, because what they finding, they realize and say, look, this is not fitting, so there has to be another explanation. But then because the academia cannot fit it into that theory, then you start being called as a heretic, crazy. They're trying to just take down all your science, all the science from all the sciences that are not going with the narrative.
But I think one of the things that is I'm optimistic about is that is starting to change, and it's starting to change very quickly, and so those walls of that kingdom are definitely coming down, and so science in some ways kind of turning on itself, and I think that's quite magic. I think that we're at a really interesting time in history where we're watching that narrative start to fall apart, and cool. Tell me, here's a side question. What was on the bedroom wall of Lina? What would I see on the bedroom walls of Lina when she was a little girl growing up? What would you see there?
Backstreet Boys.
Backstreet Boys?
I love the Backstreet Boys when I was growing up.
And did they have to convert it? They obviously converted it over to Spanish?
No.
Really?
We keep it in English. Yeah. We keep it in English. That's where you will find a huge painting of Nick Carter.
So there wasn't a picture of a mushroom, or there wasn't a picture of tree? No, okay, cool.
No, I think that came was because my dad has a farm, so pretty much every weekend, every school holidays, everything was back in the farm. And I think having that constant interaction with nature is what definitely started it. That
interest
inside me. Hang on, what is this?
Right.
All right.
Love that.
Well, let's dive in then, shall we?
Thank you.
Okay, so we were talking about, or you had mentioned before about Bruce Lipton. Can we talk a little bit about that?
So Bruce Lipton, he is a biologist, and he was teaching in medical school, and he was teaching all about the genes and how genes and the Darwinian theory, all the genes are the ones that are controlling everything in life. But then he was also all the time asking, like, hang on, but when I started my first studies, and it was all about cells, and he was culturing cells and having them in petri dishes. And the first thing his supervisor say, you always got to make sure that the environment is right, that they have the nutrients that they need, that the temp is right, And he said to him, whenever your cells are not growing, the first thing you look is at the environment, at the media, and then you go and play with the cells.
Right.
And it was kind of that correlation of, hang on, but if that is for a single cell, how is not that applying for everything else? How is not the environment having a big influence? And then when he said, hang on, I believe the influence is actually from the environment that is affecting the decision of the genes to activate or not. And he was humiliated, taken out, all of that, and just because it was out of the Darwinian theory.
And then it's come around, hasn't it now?
Now it's come around because there is a lot of science and a lot of data behind the actual effect the environment has, and how like the organisms just the environment is the one actually affecting the organism and which genes are being expressed and what is necessary for the cells to survive.
Which is epigenetics, right?
Yeah, which is a funny thing, because I was speaking to one of my GP buddies, and he was, I was talking about epigenetics, and he went, yeah, the bloody hippies were right. and epigenetics, just so when we talk about genetics and genes, genes are a bit like a blueprint. The blueprint's either on or off, and blueprints don't come on, they don't come off. And genetics is, that means that, if you have cancer in your family, you're genetically susceptible to it, right? Yeah. But where we're talking about epigenetics, it basically means from above, so below. So it is the environment that is affecting us. Yes. And it does not mean that you are genetically going to get it, or you're genetically not going to get it.
We could all have many genes that are coding for certain cancer or certain diseases.
Mm-hmm.
And actually only 5% of the population is the one that actually have genetic problems, that
Right.
are like literally genes that have been, that are not properly copied during, during the cell division, and they actually are expressing certain diseases, but it's only 5%. So
Yeah.
it leaves that 95% of us, actually, the genes are not the ones in charge.
So when you have pioneers like Lipton, when you have pioneers like Hancock and these guys, what the reason that they there was less people speaking up was because their funding would get cut off. They could lose their careers. They were demonized, which is kind of what happened with some of the guys we're about to talk about now, in terms of panspermia and hypothermophiles. But we do know then that when that was happening and when these people were being cut off, I mean, that becomes the norm. That's why people just didn't speak up. They didn't say what needed to be said.
And I think we have seen it in the last 3 years with
Yeah.
all that we have been through, and the data is starting to come out and say, well, actually, maybe it wasn't what we thought.
Yeah.
Something different. But it's not going to reach the media because it simply is not part of the narrative.
Yeah.
So this, have you seen the? It's on YouTube. It's a banned TED Talk by Rupert Sheldrake, and it's called The Science Delusion. And he talks a lot about that. He talks a lot about the fact that, science has its systems, and then something new comes in, and because it doesn't match the system, we kind of leave that little bit out. We don't incorporate it because it doesn't follow the pattern. And he expresses how it's almost like it becomes like a religion because it doesn't fit the thing. We're not using it as science. So people, in the last 3 years, we've heard a lot about the science is settled and stuff like that. But science isn't, the way I see it anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, is the science isn't meant to be settled. It's supposed to be a process, a work in a progress. It's not meant to be this is the answer and this is the only answer. There's going to be different levels of answer. And so the worry for me personally is when you can't question it. Because when you can't question it, it's a dogma. When you can question it, to me, it's science.
Exactly.
Because the questioning is like, okay, well, let's go test that out. Let's go work out if that is true or not. Whereas when somebody's
and it's sometimes that because there is a theory, and because we cannot prove it yet, it doesn't mean that it's not real.
Not there,
Because the instruments are not ready, or the technology is not ready, or the processes are not ready. It doesn't mean that it's not true.
That's not true.
But sorry, go on.
Can I just quickly go back? So, because we've kind of missed out on your story before we dive deep in the rabbit hole. So you were talking a little bit about microbiology. Your actual field is in fungal biology. So can you just talk a little bit about your journey from that point and what got you into there and coming to this as well?
It was about all that, like just that search of why are we here? Or in my case, why am I here? And that's when I started the human development books, meditations, but it was still not answer. I was like, I will feel good for 1 week, but then the next week was
the answer's still not there.
Until I came and did the work with you guys, and in the point of equilibration, which has been the most profound point in life for me, that I realized that all of this journey and all of that happened in my childhood was about the truth, and me delivering the truth, and me being part of bridging the gap between science and nature, and just bring the science into a social, the society.
So then the truth wasn't out there then?
No, the truth was always within me. That was all.
I like that.
It's a funny thing because, when science can be, so intense, right? And we need people to be able to go in and simplify things, and help us to understand stuff. And I just find that when we do that, it sparks the interest of so many people. It sparks something very deep inside of every one of us that I think everybody has when they turn up here. Some people succumb to the dogma, some people don't. But when you can ignite interest and this was one of the things that I loved when I started speaking on certain topics, that that we'd get a room full of people and say, right, we're going to talk about some stuff that's pretty cool. And when we would do this, people would just light up. People just wanted to know more, ask questions, and I just found that every one of us has an explorer inside of us. Someone that has a keen interest to understand and really answer those four-pronged questions. Where have we come from? Why am I here? What happens while I'm here? And then what happens to us afterwards? And I remember that being posed to me the first time, and I thought, wow, everybody has to have that in them. So I think that being able to simplify things and help things to be understandable and relatable is such a beautiful gift. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be something huge, but it's huge or small if we compare it to other people.
Yeah.
But that's what I feel like, or that's what I love my science is just I feel that every bit that I do is gonna be contributing to something. Or it's gonna be a part of something bigger.
I think one of the things we do is because we're in the field of human development, we use science as the basis, right? And when we talk about science, we simplify it and we make it really easy for everybody to understand, and we don't go into some of the nitty gritty, the depth that you go into. What I love about you is that everything we talk about and that we speak about in terms of the science, you'll go, okay, let me go and find out the information and stuff like that. And I think that's part of the reason we have you here. You've talked about a couple of things. You've already sort of mentioned, things like panspermia, epigenetics, alien life, things like that, right? And when we talk about it, we talk about it based on our knowledge and our understanding, and then you go and dive deep in. So I'm excited for us to dive deep in and to go, right, where do you think we should start based on, because what we're going to do now, I suppose, is take some of those concepts and talk about them in terms of your understanding. Where's the best place to start, do you think?
Well, I think one of the places to start is from the theories that are out there, and that's one of the theories that I think Mitch and I were very passionate about,
the panspermia,
the panspermia theory,
which is all about where we came from, right?
It's more about the origin of life.
Origin of life, perfect.
And where it came from. So it's basically a theory that proposed that life was originated in space and it was distributed through the cosmos, and it was distributed through the planets, through comets and meteorites, and anything that it came to Earth brought something in it.
Right.
So it's kind of like it's kind of epigenetics at a bigger scale, right?
Yeah.
If we think that the Earth is a cell,
exactly.
and it's been influenced by the environment. Well, it's epigenetics at a bigger scale.
I've never thought about it like that. That's a cool way.
The other thing is that the first time this concept was put to me, it was about 20 years ago, and I was handed a file of National Geographic documentaries, and I still have them today, and they were fucking incredible. Like each documentary was like, wow. And it was the way I like to see a great scientist is someone who has not bought into the narrative that this is this and that is that and fucking that's the way it is. People that push that line, this is not this and that is not that. And the minute you think that this is this, that's when you're wrong.
And actually, we get proved wrong all the time. All the time.
Yeah.
That's what I guess I'm fascinated about fungi, because every time we think we're going to beat them, or any time we think we know what's going to happen, they come back in a complete different way. I say, there you go, you don't know
anything about me.
Yeah, the environment. And they're so adaptable to the environment. It's crazy what I see, because I work in fungi that affect crops, and how we managing crops, and how I just feel, for me, they're so intelligent.
Yeah.
And they just evolve, and they just pick up like within seasons, they are ready for the next season, and whatever you're gonna apply in your crop, I'm ready for it, mate. Don't worry, I'm gonna be able to survive. But anyway, in the terms of panspermia, is that just look at the planet as a little cell and what is affecting it from out there.
And you know what? One of the cool things is I love your love of fungi. When you talk about it, it's like you have this relationship. You know what I mean? And I see you just with this mushroom going to sleep at night and just, it's okay, baby, I love you.
In my phone, my screensaver, everything at home is
like your little best friends.
Your teddy bear's a mushroom.
I think they. But actually, it's a little side story, but I think my fascination with fungi started at university when we were having the mycology class. Mycology is the study of fungi. And they give us this experiment. They give us these bags inoculated with mushrooms,
Right.
and the goal of the study was to be able to produce mushrooms out of these bags, because
Right.
the bags were inoculated with the mushrooms.
So when you say you're talking bugs,
No,
Bag.
fungi.
Fungi.
Bags of wood chips.
Oh,
Yes, so
okay,
like
okay.
the way that
Okay.
mushrooms are
Okay.
like eatable mushrooms are
Yeah.
produced.
Okay.
And they give us this bag that was inoculated with eatable mushrooms, and by the end of the semester, the idea was that we will have a mushroom to eat.
Yeah.
Right.
That was the purpose. So
Right.
and we were the environment.
Right.
So we will have to keep them wet, keep them warm,
Right.
keep them dark, all of that. Everyone in the class, all of the bags die. They got contaminated by something else. All of the bags, everyone died.
Right.
And the only person that had a mushroom at the end of it was me. And I
You were like,
and I was like, I was about to give up. I'm like, I'm sick of this. It never grows. It's all white and nothing is happening.
Yeah.
And then one day, this little mushroom pops out of it.
Did you eat
And
him? Did you eat him?
No, that's the
What?
thing. I love mushrooms and I don't eat them.
You
I
don't
just, I
eat
just
them?
can't. I just
Wow.
can't.
no way.
I can't eat. I mean, physically, I know I can, but I just don't like them. I don't know. I think maybe it's an emotional connection. Like,
Wow.
I cannot kill the babies.
So how did you end up making it grow? What did you do? What did you do different to everyone else? Do you think?
I think it was just care.
Really?
I guess it was just
You're
like
the
I was
mama mushroom.
consistent to what they told us. Oh, you gotta spray like 3 times a day, and you gotta keep them in a dark place and keep
Slightly
it
warm,
humid.
yeah.
And I remember, we used to live in this house. We only had 2 bedrooms and 2 showers, and I put them back in the shower, but no one could shower in there for like 6 months. So we were all showering in one bathroom, and I was like, "No, don't touch the mushroom. Don't
Leave
look
the
at it." And my
mushrooms.
dad was like, "Oh, we need the shower." And I'm, "No, he's growing." So it was a funny story. But so.
There you go.
Yeah. So look, just to touch on that documentary, what I saw years ago was a documentary about where they were talking about panspermia, where there was bacteria. The concept was that there was bacteria that made it through extreme environmental heat and was able to survive on meteors in temperatures above boiling point, and those meteors landed on the planet and under the right environment were able to turn into organisms, etc., etc. And that was like, wow.
How
that
old
just
were you?
astounded. This is 20 years ago. I think the documentary itself was probably, I was 30. The documentary itself was probably about 12 years old when I watched it. So it was pretty old, and I was like, why are people not talking about this? Like, why is this not out there? This needs to be discussed. And I'd been discussing it then for about 20 years, and then you came along. And I put this to you, and I put this to a class one day, and you went, "Well, I'm gonna go and have a look at that," and off you went. And hey, presto, some really cool stuff came out of it, which I think is
so
awesome.
I think the theory has taken a lot of time to become an actual theory.
Yeah.
And only in the 1970s, 2 scientists called Fred Hoyle and Chandra Vikram Singh. Oh, his name is it's hard to pronounce yet. But anyway, they were the ones that proposed that the life forms entered the planet, and they were responsible for like putting the genetic material and putting the little building blocks for what we call evolution nowadays.
Right.
So they're not completely saying, "Oh, Darwinian theory is wrong," but they're saying there is something else before that. There was something that seeded it.
It's like the inoculation of the bag, right? The mushroom bag.
Pretty much. You need something to start it.
Right.
And then in the right conditions, right?
Then
Got
in the
it.
right conditions, and they were saying from the beginning, well, there was microorganisms in the meteorites, and because we have organisms that can live in crazy conditions. We got in Antarctica, and nowadays we even sequencing microorganisms in the International Space Station. Which
Wow.
is, that's what I work right now. I mean, I'm not working in the sequencing of them, but I work with the technology they're working with, and they have this technology to sequence what's out there,
Wow.
to bring in samples.
Can you just explain that to me? What does you mean by sequencing?
Sequencing is when we look at the genes,
Right.
like the sequence of the genes. So the genes are, the genomic material is made of these little pieces. Imagine
Yep.
like a puzzle.
Yeah.
And each puzzle, and the order of those
The
little
puzzle
puzzles
pieces, yeah.
is what we call a gene. And the genes, I believe, also they are in charge of all that the cell goes
Right,
through.
yeah.
But it has a lot of information on what it came from.
Right.
And it has all the information of their parent cells and the environment they were into, and they tell a lot. So the genome tells a lot. So what we go and do is the sequencing is taking that material, DNA material or genomic material out of the cell, and then we look into it really, really closely, and then we start making predictions, or we know
Right.
what's going on.
So it tells a story.
It tells a story,
about the
yeah.
previous environment of where it's come
or
from.
the current environment that they were in.
Right. And
Yeah.
why is that important? Tell me why that's important for anybody to understand. Why is that important?
Well, because basically it's telling us what I say, like the environment and also, like, for example, in what the work that I do is there is certain genes that are, for example, in charge of making the fungi capable of surviving certain conditions.
Right.
Which in our case, in the case of crops, is what the fungi are killing the crops.
Right.
So if they expressing these genes, we need to be able to beat them up before they are expressing it, or
Right,
change
right.
what we're doing,
Right.
so that we can change their capacity to survive.
Right.
So is the same as, for example, with the genome project, the human genome project,
Right.
like years ago, and then when they started, because they thought, well, based on the Darwinian theory that the genes were the ones in charge of everything, so we needed to find out how the genes were behaving. What are the genes? So if I turn this gene off, am I gonna get rid of this disease, for example?
Right.
That in terms of medicine, that's where we studied it a lot, because we want to know where things are coming from, and if the sequence of the genome, so the way the order of those little nucleotides or the little pieces are in a different way, so that's what is making the expression or the outside characteristic be different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So can we, while we're there talking about the genes, you...
Genome, you mean?
Yeah, genomes. You heard me say years ago that I'd listened to an interview, and we then watched what happened on London Real, where they were talking about the splicing of the second genome, which was not what it was actually about.
No, it's the chromosome number.
It's the
2.
chromosome number 2.
Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about chromosome
That
number
was
2?
Greg Braden on London Real,
Well,
right?
we're going
that's a
away
great
from the
brain.
panspermia theory, but okay.
Can
Yeah,
we
let's
just, while
do-
we're on it, can we just...
We'll come
cover
back.
it.
Circle back.
So basically is that there's the scientists that they did a study comparing the genomes of the chimpanzees or the monkeys compared to ours, and then because what is being said and is being proved is that we descend from the chimpanzee and the monkey. But what was the difference? What happened that make the jump in evolution? That they stay there and we are here.
Yeah, so and when we talk about a jump in evolution, what we're talking about is that there was a really small period of time where a chimpanzee stood upright and became quite vertical. And so for that to happen through evolution, even over a 2 million year period, is just nonsensical. It's just not possible. Something had to have happened.
Something had to happen. And so then that's where, for example, the genome sequencing, that when it comes in, because then they went and look in the chromosomes of the chimpanzee and start comparing it to the humans.
Right.
And they started noticing that a chromosome number 2, which is the chromosome that is involved in all of the front part of our brain, which is our, like, the capacity to speech and like the consciousness that we have. It was in that chromosome that gives us the majority of these characteristics of the human, the current human form, and they started comparing it with the chromosomes of the chimpanzee. And what they realized is that what it seems like some chromosomes, so the extra chromosomes that the chimpanzee had, somehow in us, it became 1. So 2 became 1 in us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when they talk about the splicing of the chromosome number 2, because there is parts of the chromosome, the original chromosome number 2, but that they are part of one of the chromosomes in chimpanzee, but then other part of that same chromosome is a complete separate chromosome in the chimpanzees. So it's kind of like there was some sort of fusion. There was something that joined them together.
But it wasn't nature.
Well, I cannot completely say it was not nature.
Mm-hmm.
But from the data and the processes that we have, is very unlikely to say that that evolutionary speaking it will take.
So basically, let me just simplify that for my own sake. When you're talking about the sequencing, you're looking in, you're figuring out the information, so you're also finding out where it came from. So when you're looking at this and you're finding out where it came from, it doesn't make sense what the theory of the fact that they're saying that we came from this, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, it is just different. It doesn't completely fit.
Right.
Because the genomes are so similar, but at the same time, there is pieces of it that are so completely different. And that is when we see that two of them became one of us.
Right.
Ours.
But when I was watching the interview, the thing that and I've watched him say it live as well, was that he was stating that it was deliberate. He said he was saying it's deliberate, and they were like, "Well, so who did it?" And he goes, "That's not the question," And then he veered off. But when I heard him say it, I was like, "Are you saying it was deliberate?" And he's like, "Yes, it's deliberate. From what we can see, it's deliberate. For us to be able to do what we were able to do, we had to deliberately be able to get there."
Yeah.
So whatever has happened back then, and he also threw a time in of about 250,000 years ago. And I was just like, what the fuck? Oh, my God. And then whenever I talk about it, I send people to the interviews, and I'm like, go and have a look at these interviews. So what do you think of that?
Well, I go back into my mushrooms, and I like the mushroom theory as well, that part of that jump in evolution was due to the possibility that of humans interacting with mushrooms and eating them and taking them in these trips and helping the evolution of the brain in another way.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is another.
Is another
not even
theory.
I don't think it's even considered a theory, but which is the stoned ape theory, and it's not even a theory, but because that kind of makes it could have made sense that they're consuming in the playing fields, they're consuming these mushrooms, which is sending them on, giving them these huge fucking consciousness downloads, which then is evolving their brain, and then they're evolving, the ability to defend themselves, and then instead of being attacked by the saber tooth, they're
creating new tools.
Creating new tools, and so they're having this huge input or download over a 2 million year period, which then it could be.
But not committing.
Well, I'm not committing, no.
No, that's good.
Well, that's scientists for you, right?
Yeah.
Which is good. It's not proven, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we don't know.
exactly. We don't know until we know.
That's exactly right. So then let's. Sorry.
Well, if we circle back to panspermia,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
do you think that's going to take a while to explain?
No, well, it's just basically what they're trying to do, like the scientists that are trying to prove that the panspermia is a possibility and it proven with scientific facts. So, for example, one of them is like they have found fossilized microorganisms in rocks. For example, here in Western Australia, there is it's called the Jack Hills. It's in like middle Western Australia, where is the fossil of the oldest fossil, which is about 4.2 billion years of what is believed the first life forms to be on planet Earth, which is the same in Canada. All the forms as well were found in rocks, in sediments, and they also have like the characteristic of living forms.
Right.
So, and then it's like correlating this 4.2 billion years ago, what was going on in planet Earth. We were being bombarded by comets, meteorites, even before that. And why? So if they are if they are inside those rocks, then they are able to survive. They are protected.
Right.
And that's what they also now we're trying to prove, or like what we're trying to see. And I guess that's why the huge interest in other planets, because we're trying to see what's out there. And if the microorganisms are able to survive out there, well,
But
there was-
then the thing is, like out there, the Earth is out there,
Yeah.
right? And if they haven't come from out there, they have to have. Then they have to have come from in here. But in here is out there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, exactly.
so
We-
all they're trying to do is all that's really being said is, okay, what was the direction of which they fucking came?
exactly. Yeah. So then, and also like proving that, like all the little particles and the little molecules that were necessary to sustain life for many years, it was said, no, it was only in planet Earth. There was no other place that life would be able to be sustained. But now there's lots of data proving like there is billions of planets that are able to sustain life, even only within the Milky Way.
Countless number, yeah.
Countless numbers.
Yeah.
And if they are able to sustain it, just because we can't see it yet, it doesn't mean that. So it's proving wrong. Like Earth is not the only place. So if these areas, so these planets are capable to sustain life, well, we just have to, until we get to prove that the life is there. It doesn't mean that the life wasn't in there. Before us.
Yeah.
You know, and it was probably seeded into the planet.
Yeah.
So we've probably got a lot more to talk about, right? So I think what we might do is we might finish up here and then come back and have another chat with you.
Yeah.
But before we finish up, what do you think is why does it matter? Like, why is talking about this important, do you think? Like, understanding that life came and that we were like that whole concept of epigenetics and that the Earth is the cell and that we're affected by our environment. How does that impact us as human beings? Like, why do you think that that's an important thing for us to know, including you, Midge? You know?
Well, I believe because we are part of that universe, and everything that applies in the bigger scale applies in the small scale.
Yeah.
The cells that we have every single little. If you go and just like zoom into a cell, the cell has all the information, and it goes through the cell, all of the processes we go: digestion, excretion, eating, everything, communicating with others. Is just in a smaller form.
Yeah.
But then when you start to zoom out, then you go your organs, then you go the whole body, then you go to society. So is whatever is the understanding of what's out there, that macroscopic universe. It applies to the macroscopic.
To the macroscopic.
Yeah.
So that can impact us on a macroscopic level if we can understand what's going on at that microscopic level.
I
Which is essentially what we talk about in the end, you know, that whole what we do at a cell level, like in terms of the equilibration process, and you having that shift. You're shifting internally, and you're shifting your cells. Something happens in the cell, and it affects you environmentally as well as vice versa, right?
Yeah, and affects the environment that you are in and the people that is around you.
Yeah.
But I also, for me, it's like I get that there is, you know, we have our physical world, we have our non-physical world. There's an intrinsic link between the two. That means that it one is the other. But also that, you know, when we start to understand the origins of where we've come from, the origins of where we're going, we're less likely to be attached to this physical form
I agree.
and this 80 years, and therefore we're going to treat our future like it's something we will turn up in again. So we've got to be kind to it. We've got to be, you know, we've got to take care of it. We've got to understand that we're laying our own bed. Yeah. And I think that really is why I'm so interested in it, because I think that if we can get humanity to understand that you know, we are the universe. We are the universe. Yeah. We separate ourselves. We've been told to believe in these anthropomorphic figures that you never see, that are outside of you, and you just have to fucking trust that, you know, no.
It's all within us.
It's within us, and you got to. And so if we can build that relationship, between our inner world and our outer world, and understand that this universe we are in is fucking magnificent.
And
like
it affects us every
all
day.
The time.
Everything.
All
the stars,
the time.
the planets, everything. We are part of it.
Yeah.
And it influences our responses. It influences the way we just go about life.
So it's really having an understanding that we're connected to the whole
We are
thing,
connected.
that we're not separate, that we have this illusion that we're separate, but we're actually not.
We are all
That's the
together.
whole, right, cool, I really like that. So I think what we might do is leave it there and then we'll come back and chat. But there's a few things that we've mentioned on here, which I suppose that anybody who wants to find out a little bit more can go do that. We've mentioned the London Real podcast with Greg Braden. That'd be really worthwhile. The Stoned Ape Theory, which is on YouTube, which is the Paul Stamets and Joe Rogan talking about it. The Stoned Ape Theory would be good to listen to. And also that The Science Delusion with Rupert Sheldrake. It's a banned TED Talk. That's really worthwhile to have a listen to, just to hear some of the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah, and I think when we come back, what we'll do is we will talk about, I want to talk about the evidence now of what we are now seeing is alien life on Earth. I think that's something that is we're at a point now where we can actually talk about it, where it's not going to get not going to get poo-pooed. It's not going. It's no.
But because it's
we've
evidence.
got there's actual evidence now.
Oh, how exciting!
Yes.
All right,
Thank
we'll
you,
catch you
guys.
next time. Thanks so much, Lina.
Thank you, guys.
Even if you live the most extraordinary life, there is always more to learn. This is why tens of thousands of people are using MJB seminars techniques to hack their consciousness and bridge the gap from where they are to where they actually want to be.
MJB seminars use cutting-edge transformational processes that are science-based and backed to help people break through subconscious barriers and limiting beliefs in order to reset, reboot, and live inspired. If you'd like to know more today, Google search MJB Seminars Bridge the Gap, click on the first link and watch the video.
Now, for simply watching the video, you will also receive a complimentary coaching session with one of our master coaches valued at over $600 to help you get traction in your life today. Remember, live life inspired.